The chains were heavy on his old wrists. Wu walked slowly across the cold metal floor of the throne room. His white hair was dirty and messy. His simple civilian clothes were torn. He looked like what he was supposed to look like, a weak old man from a weak species. The throne room of Prime was the largest building Wu had ever seen. Giant pillars of black stone reached up into darkness. Thousands of alien nobles filled the viewing platforms on both sides. They had come from across the Dominion Empire to see this moment, to see a human. High Emperor sat on his throne at the far end of the room. His body was covered in natural armor that looked like dark purple scales. 4 arms crossed over his chest. His eyes glowed yellow in the dim light. He was the most powerful being in 300 star systems, and he was smiling. The guards pushed Wu forward. He stumbled but did not fall. 78 years of life had taught him many things. One of them was how to stay on his feet. The crowd began to laugh. The sound echoed through the massive chamber like thunder. They pointed at the human with their claws and tentacles and strange limbs. Some threw pieces of food at him. Others shouted insults in languages his translator could not process. Wu kept walking. His eyes moved slowly across the room. He counted the guards, 24 near the throne, 16 at each exit. He noted the weapons they carried, energy rifles mostly. A few carried bladed weapons. He observed the nobles, which ones had guards, which ones seemed important, which ones looked nervous. Emperor stood from his throne and descended the steps. He moved with the confidence of someone who had never faced a real challenge. His footsteps made the floor shake slightly with each step. He was nearly 3 meters tall. He stopped directly in front of Wu and looked down at him. "So this is a human," said. His voice was deep and filled with amusement. "I expected something more impressive." The crowd laughed again, began to walk in slow circles around the old man. He examined him like a child examining an insect before crushing it. "No claws," said, lifting one of Wu's hands with a single finger. "No natural armor, no venom glands, your teeth are flat, your eyes are small, your bones are thin." He released the hand and stepped back. "How did your species survive long enough to reach the stars?" Wu said nothing. He simply stood and watched the emperor with calm eyes. Lord stepped forward from beside the throne. He was smaller than the emperor but dressed in elaborate robes that showed his high position. He carried a data tablet in his thin fingers. "Great Emperor," said with a bow, "allow me to present the official assessment of the human species." Waved his hand in approval. He returned to his throne to watch the show. Activated the tablet and began to read. "Humans originate from a small planet called Earth. They have no natural weapons. Their skin offers no protection. They require constant temperature control. They must eat multiple times per day. They sleep for 1/3 of their lives. Their reproduction rate is extremely slow. A human female carries only 1 or 2 offspring at a time, and these offspring require nearly 2 decades to reach maturity." The crowd reacted with shock and laughter. 2 decades to mature. How had such a species not gone extinct? "Furthermore," continued, "humans have extremely short. This specimen is 78 years old. By their standards, he is ancient. He will likely die within the next decade regardless of our actions." More laughter, was smiling widely now. This was exactly the entertainment he had hoped for. "They depend entirely on artificial tools," said. "Without their machines, they cannot survive in space. Without their weapons, they cannot fight. Without their medicine, they die from the smallest infections. They are, by every measure, one of the weakest intelligent species in the known galaxy." A noble in the crowd shouted something. Others joined in. Soon they were chanting. The translator in Wu's ear processed the words, "Weak, weak, weak." Wu remained still. His face showed nothing, but his mind was working. The guards changed shifts every 2 hours based on what he had observed. The energy rifles had a firing rate of approximately 12 shots before requiring a recharge. The emperor's throne was positioned near a structural support column. Interesting. A tall female figure approached the emperor's throne from a side entrance. Grand Admiral moved with military precision. Her scales were darker than the emperor's, almost black. She leaned close to and spoke quietly. "Great Emperor, I advise caution with this one." Looked at her with annoyance. "Caution with this frail creature." "I have studied human history," said. "The records we captured from their colony worlds. There are stories about them that concern me. They call themselves the survivors of a death world. Their planet tried to kill them for millions of years, and they conquered it." The emperor laughed. "Stories, propaganda, look at him. He is old and broken. What threat could he possibly pose?" Looked at Wu. The old human was watching her. There was something in his eyes that she did not like, something calm and patient, like a predator waiting for the right moment. "He is too calm," she said. "Any other species would be begging for mercy by now. Crying, screaming, he simply watches and thinks." "Then he is stupid as well as weak," said. He waved his hand to dismiss her concerns. "Return to your fleet, Admiral. I will handle this personally." Bowed and stepped back, but she did not leave. She moved to the edge of the room and continued to watch the human with careful eyes. A guard stepped forward and kicked Wu in the back of his legs. The old man fell to his knees. The crowd cheered, leaned forward on his throne, enjoying the sight. "Beg," the emperor commanded. "Beg for your life, human. Show everyone what your species truly is." Wu slowly raised his head. For the first time since entering the throne room, he spoke. His voice was quiet but clear. "Do you know who I am?" The question was so unexpected that the room fell silent for a moment, then began to laugh. The sound was loud and cruel. "Do I know who you are?" The emperor stood and spread all four arms wide. "You are an insect. You are nothing. You are a specimen from a weak species that will soon bow to the Dominion. Why would I care about the name of something so insignificant?" Wu nodded slowly, as if the emperor had given him exactly the answer he expected. "I see," he said quietly. "Then you will learn." No one in the throne room understood what he meant. They saw only a weak old man making empty threats. They laughed and returned to their mockery. But watched from the shadows. She had seen many enemies in her long career. She had fought against species with powerful weapons and massive fleets. None of them had ever looked at her emperor the way this old human did, like he was already planning something, like he was not the prisoner here. She activated her personal communicator and sent a quiet message to her intelligence officers. "Find out everything about this human. Everything." On his knees in the center of the throne room, surrounded by enemies who thought he was nothing, Wu allowed himself a small moment of satisfaction. The first part was complete. They had shown him everything. Now he just needed to survive long enough for the message to reach Earth. The chains on his wrists were heavy, but he had carried heavier burdens before. The intelligence report arrived at Earth Command Headquarters on Luna at 3 in the morning. Dr. Shin was still at her desk. She never seemed to sleep. Some of her staff joked that she was more machine than human. They did not know how close to the truth they were. Opened the report and scanned the contents. A Dominion raiding party had attacked the colony world of Nu, 17 civilians killed, 3 captured. She read the names of the captured with tired eyes. 2 were workers from the memorial construction site. The third was a visitor who had been placing flowers at the memorial garden. The name on the report made her stop breathing. Wu, civilian, age 78, retired. For a long moment, simply stared at the screen. Then she was moving. Her fingers flew across the keyboard as she the information. She accessed military records. She checked and double-checked. When she was certain, she reached for her emergency communication device. Commander Hana was asleep on her flagship, the Eternal Soul, when the priority alert woke her. She was on her feet before she was fully awake. 20 years in the fleet had trained her body to respond before her mind caught up. "This is Commander," she said into the communicator. "Commander, this is Dr. Shin from Intelligence. We have a situation that requires your immediate attention. I am sending you a file now. Please confirm when you receive it." Hana walked to her personal terminal and opened the file. She read it twice. Then she sat down heavily in her chair. "Are you certain?" she asked. "I it 3 times myself," replied. "The Dominion captured Admiral Wu from New Colony. He was visiting his wife's memorial." Hana closed her eyes. She remembered the old admiral clearly. She had been a young cadet when she first met him at the Naval Academy. He had been teaching a class on tactical theory. Most cadets were afraid of him. His reputation was legendary. He had ended the swarm invasion in a single battle. He had stopped the Outer Rim Rebellion without firing a shot. He had written the tactical doctrines that every human officer memorized before their first command. But Hana had never been afraid of him. She had seen past the legend to the man underneath. A quiet man who loved his wife. A patient teacher who cared about his students. A warrior who hated war but understood its necessity. "I was his student," Hana said quietly. "He trained me personally for 2 years." "I know," replied. "That is why I am calling you first. The Dominion does not know who they have captured. His civilian records do not mention his military service. They think they have an ordinary old man." Hana stood and began to pace. Her mind was already working on the problem. How long until they figure out the truth? Unknown. The admiral retired 30 years ago. Most of his service records are classified at the highest level. But if Grand Admiral investigates human military history, she may find references to him. Hana repeated. She knew that name. The Dominion's most capable military commander. The only one who had ever given human forces a real challenge. She will investigate. She is too smart not to. "Agreed. We may have days, we may have hours. Commander, what do you want to do?" Hana stopped packing. She looked out the window of her quarters at the stars. Somewhere out there, her old mentor was in chains. The man who had taught her everything she knew about war was being held by an enemy who thought he was worthless. "Call an emergency meeting of all fleet commanders," she said. "Full encryption, no records, and start preparing a rescue operation. Use whatever resources you need." "Understood, Commander." The communication ended. Hana began to dress in her uniform. She had work to do. On Prime, the torture had begun. Wu lay on a metal table in a small room deep beneath the palace. A Dominion specialist stood over him with various instruments. The specialist had been trained to break prisoners from dozens of species. He knew exactly how much pain each body type could handle. "Humans are interesting," the specialist said in a conversational tone. "Your nervous system is very sensitive. You feel pain more strongly than most species. This should make my job easier." He pressed a device against Wu's arm. The old man's body jerked as electricity coursed through his muscles, but he did not scream. "Good," the specialist said. "You are strong for your age. This will make the process more enjoyable." The session continued for an hour. Pain devices, neural disruptors, chemical injections. Wu experienced all of them. His body trembled, sweat covered his skin, but he gave them nothing. No information, no begging, no tears. During a brief rest period, Wu spoke through cracked lips. "Your fleet," he said. "How many ships in the Home Defense Force?" The specialist laughed. "Are you trying to interrogate me, old man? You are the prisoner here." "Just curious," Wu said. "Professional interest." The specialist shook his head at the strange human. 800 capital ships, 4,000 support vessels, the largest fleet in the galaxy. Does that satisfy your curiosity? "And your supply lines, where do they originate?" "You are delirious from the pain," the specialist said. "Rest, we will continue soon." But Wu was not delirious. His mind was clear. Every question had a purpose. Every answer was stored carefully in his memory. The specialist thought he was talking to a broken old man. He was actually providing intelligence to one of humanity's greatest military minds. Grand Admiral stood in her private study, surrounded by data screens. Information about humans scrolled across every surface. She had been reading for hours. What she found disturbed her. The human species had existed for only a few 100,000 years. In the timeline of the galaxy, they were infants. Yet they had accomplished things that made no sense. They had survived an ice age that covered their planet. They had survived multiple extinction events. They had survived diseases that killed millions. They had survived wars that destroyed entire nations. Each time, they came back stronger. And their military history was terrifying. Found references to something called World War II, a single conflict that killed over 70 million humans, 70 million of their own species. They had developed weapons that could destroy entire cities in seconds. They had used these weapons on themselves, and they had continued to advance. But it was the more recent records that concerned her most, references to someone called Admiral, a human military commander who had defeated the swarm. They were a hive-mind species with billions of soldiers. They had consumed entire civilizations. One human admiral had stopped them. There was no image of this admiral, no detailed biography, just fragments, stories that sounded like legends. He had ended wars with words. He had won battles that seemed impossible. He had never lost. And he had retired 30 years ago to civilian life. Pulled up the image of their prisoner, an old human, white hair, calm eyes. 78 years old. The timing was right. She immediately contacted Emperor. Great Emperor, I need to speak with you urgently. Was in the middle of a feast celebrating the human's capture. He was annoyed by the interruption. What is it? Our prisoner. I believe he may be more important than we realized. I request permission to conduct a detailed interrogation. The Emperor laughed. He is an old man, Admiral. What importance could he possibly have? I found references in human records to a military commander called Admiral. The timeline matches our prisoner. Was silent for a moment, then he laughed again. Even if you are correct, what difference does it make? He is old, weak. Whatever he once was, he is nothing now. Great Emperor, I advise caution. If the humans learn we have captured someone important to them, they may respond aggressively. Let them respond, bellowed. I want them to respond. I have been waiting for an excuse to crush their little civilization. If they attack us, we will destroy them completely. Great Emperor, I urge you to reconsider. The humans have never been truly tested. We do not know what they are capable of. I know exactly what they are capable of, said. Nothing. Tomorrow, I will broadcast the human's execution across the galaxy. Let his people see what happens to those who resist the Dominion. Let them come if they dare. The communication ended. Stood alone in her study, surrounded by information about humanity's bloody history. The Emperor was making a terrible mistake. She was certain of it, but she could not disobey a direct order. She could only prepare for what was coming. On Luna, Commander Hana stood before a room full of fleet commanders. Their faces were grim. They had all heard the news. The Dominion has our admiral, Hana said. They do not know his true identity, but they will find out soon. When they do, they will either kill him or use him as bait to draw us into a trap. What do you propose? Asked one of the commanders. Hana's eyes were hard. We do not wait for them to make the next move. We prepare everything, every ship, every soldier, every weapon. And when the time comes, we remind the galaxy why humanity should never be underestimated. The commanders nodded. They had all studied under Admiral at some point in their careers. They owed him everything they knew. They would bring him home or burn the Dominion trying. The human fleet began to mobilize. Emperor had prepared the grandest spectacle in the history of the Dominion. The throne room was filled with representatives from every conquered species. They sat in special sections, forced to attend by armed guards. Wanted them to see this. He wanted them to understand what resistance meant. Broadcast drones floated throughout the chamber, transmitting the event across the galaxy. Billions of beings on thousands of worlds were watching. This was the Emperor's moment of triumph, the humiliation of humanity. Wu was dragged into the throne room once again. His condition was worse than before. Days of torture had left visible marks on his body. He walked with a limp. One eye was swollen shut, but he was still alive, still standing. The crowd of conquered species watched in silence. They had seen this before. Other prisoners from other worlds broken and displayed before their execution. It was always the same. The prisoner would beg, the emperor would laugh, and another species would learn the cost of resistance. But some of them noticed something different about this human. He was old and damaged, yes, but he walked with his head high. His one good eye scanned the room with careful attention. He did not look like someone waiting to die. He looked like someone waiting for something else. Stood before his throne in full ceremonial armor. His 4 arms were spread wide to receive the applause of his nobles. Lord stood beside him, holding a ceremonial blade that would be used for the execution. Citizens of the Dominion, his voice boomed through the chamber. Today we demonstrate the fate of all who oppose our righteous expansion. Today we show the galaxy the weakness of humanity. The nobles cheered. The conquered species remained silent. Descended from his throne and walked toward Wu. He moved slowly, enjoying every moment. The broadcast drones followed him, capturing his magnificence for the galaxy to see. Human said, stopping directly in front of the old man. Your species has one chance to avoid total destruction. Surrender unconditionally. Accept Dominion rule. Become our servants and you may live. Wu said nothing. If you refuse, continued, I will personally lead my fleet to Earth. I will burn your cities. I will enslave your people. I will erase your species from history. He leaned closer. And it will begin with your death, right here, right now. The Emperor kicked Wu in the chest. The old man fell backward onto the floor. The crowd of nobles laughed and cheered. Some of the conquered species turned away, unable to watch. Beg, commanded. Beg for your worthless life. Beg for the lives of your people. Show the galaxy what humans truly are. Wu lay on the floor for a long moment. His body ached. Every breath was painful. He had known this moment would come. He had prepared for it during every torture session, every sleepless night in his cell. Everything had led to this. Slowly, painfully, he began to rise. The crowd fell silent as they watched the broken old man push himself to his feet. It took him nearly a minute. His arms trembled, his legs shook, but he stood. And when he was finally upright, he looked directly at Emperor. Something in his gaze made the Emperor hesitate. It was subtle, a flicker of uncertainty that crossed his face for just a moment. The broadcast drones captured it perfectly. I want to thank you, Wu said. His voice was quiet but clear. The room was so silent that everyone heard him. Blinked, thank me. Yes, Wu said. Thank you for the broadcast. Billions of beings are watching right now, including every human in the galaxy. You have shown them exactly what kind of enemy they face. You have shown them what the Dominion truly is. You thank me for showing your weakness, laughed. You truly are a foolish species. I thank you for showing your arrogance, Wu replied, and for answering my questions. His laughter stopped. What questions? Wu straightened his broken body. The movement caused him obvious pain, but he did not show it on his face. During my interrogation, I asked your specialist about your fleet composition. 800 capital ships, 4,000 support vessels. I asked about your supply lines. They originate from the system and extend through 12 major distribution points. I asked about your defensive positions. Your main fleet is concentrated here, at your capital, with secondary forces spread thin across your conquered territories. The room was completely silent now. Even the nobles had stopped smiling. I asked about your communication network, centralized command structure. If the primary hub is destroyed, your fleets lose coordination for approximately 6 hours before backup systems activate. I asked about your emperor. Wu looked directly at, beloved by his nobles, feared by his subjects, but respected by none. His face twisted with rage. You dare to speak to me this way? You are nothing. You are a weak, dying creature from a weak, dying species. You keep saying that, Wu said calmly. Weak. You see our soft skin and flat teeth and you think we are prey. You do not understand what those things mean. He took a step forward. The guards raised their weapons, but something made them hesitate, something in the old man's eyes. We have no claws because we built weapons that make claws useless. We have no armor because we learned to kill before our enemies could touch us. We have no venom because we created poisons that can kill entire worlds. You call us primitive because we depend on tools, but our tools conquered our planet. Our tools took us to the stars. Our tools will be the last thing your empire ever sees. Stepped backward without realizing it. The movement was instinctive. The broadcast drones captured that too. You call me old and weak, Wu continued. I am 78 years old. In that time, I have commanded fleets that darkened the skies of 100 worlds. I have ended wars that killed millions. I have written the tactics that every human soldier learns before their first battle. You captured an old man visiting his wife's grave and thought you had captured a helpless victim. His voice grew stronger with each word. The pain seemed to fade from his body. He stood taller than he had since his capture. I am Wu, Admiral of the United Earth Defense Fleet. The humans called me the Patient Storm. Your Grand Admiral knows that name. She has been researching it for days. Ask her what she found. Ask her what humans do to those who threaten our people. In the shadows at the edge of the room closed her eyes. She had tried to warn him. She had tried. Wu's voice carried across the silent throne room, broadcast to billions across the galaxy. You wanted to make an example of me. Congratulations. You have made an example, but not the one you intended. He looked directly into the nearest broadcast drone. His one good eye burned with something that made even take another step back. To every human watching this broadcast, you see what they did to me. You see what they plan to do to all of us. They call us weak. They call us nothing. They think they can break us with pain and fear. His voice dropped to almost a whisper, but every word was clear. They are wrong. Then he turned back to. The emperor was no longer smiling. The nobles had fallen completely silent. The conquered species were watching with something new in their eyes, something like hope. You asked me to beg, Wu said. I will not beg. Instead, I will give you a warning, one warning. It is more than you deserve, but it is how humans do things. We give our enemies one chance to walk away. He straightened to his full height. Despite his injuries, despite his age, there was something terrifying about him in that moment. The broadcast drones captured an old man who had become something more. Release me. Apologize to the species you have conquered. Withdraw your fleets from human space. Do this, and we will allow the Dominion to continue existing. Found his voice. You threaten me. You, one broken old man against the greatest empire in the galaxy. Wu smiled. It was not a warm smile. I am not alone. Alarms began to sound throughout the palace. Red lights flashed on every console. Guards looked at their communicators with confusion and growing fear. Received a report from her fleet commanders. Her face went pale. She ran toward the Emperor. Great Emperor, human ships have been detected entering Dominion space. Multiple contact points, hundreds of vessels. Spun toward her, how many? His voice was barely a whisper. All of them, every human warship in existence, they are coming here. The throne room erupted in chaos. Nobles screamed and ran for the exits. Guards shouted orders that no one followed. The conquered species watched in stunned silence. Through it all, Wu stood perfectly still. The chaos flowed around him like water around a stone. He looked at Emperor with calm, patient eyes. "You wanted war with humanity," he said quietly. "We will give you war." The broadcast drones transmitted his words across the galaxy. On 1,000 worlds, beings who had lived under Dominion oppression heard them, and for the first time in generations, they began to hope. On 100 human ships racing toward Dominion space, soldiers watched their admiral's message. They saw what had been done to him. They saw him stand and speak without fear. Commander Hana stood on the bridge of the Eternal Soul, watching the broadcast. Tears ran down her face, but her voice was steady when she gave the order. "All ships maximum speed. We are bringing our admiral home." The human fleet accelerated toward Prime. The war had begun. The first battle happened at the Dominion shipyards of Station. Commander Hana led the first fleet out of faster-than-light travel directly into the heart of enemy territory. The Dominion defenders had only minutes of warning. It was not enough. Hana stood on the bridge of the Eternal Soul, watching the tactical display. Green dots representing human ships surrounded the station like a closing fist. Red dots representing Dominion vessels scrambled to respond. "All ships execute Pattern 7, Hana ordered. Pattern 7, a tactic from Admiral Wu's own textbook, precise, overwhelming, efficient. The human ships moved as one, each captain knowing exactly where they needed to be. The Dominion defenders tried to form a defensive line. The human fleet cut through it like a blade through paper. The shipyards burned. Construction platforms that had taken decades to build were reduced to debris in minutes. Half-finished warships meant to threaten Earth became floating wreckage. The message was clear. Humanity was not here to negotiate. On the other side of Dominion space, Captain Ho led his strike force against the enemy communication network. He was known for his aggressive tactics. Some called him reckless, but there was method in his aggression. He understood that wars were won by speed and violence of action. His target was a communication relay station. If it fell, the Dominion fleets in 3 sectors would lose contact with their central command. They would be blind and confused for hours. "Enemy ships approaching," his tactical officer reported. 12 cruisers, 40 support vessels. Ho smiled. "Only 40, they insult us." His strike force numbered only 20 ships. The odds were against them. But Ho had learned from the same teacher as Hana, and that teacher had shown him that numbers were not everything. "All ships attack Pattern Storm Break," he ordered. "Target their command ship first. Take out their leader and the rest will scatter." The human ships dove toward the enemy formation. The Dominion cruisers opened fire. Space lit up with energy beams and missile trails. A human destroyer took a direct hit and exploded. Another lost its engines and began to drift, but the rest kept coming. Ho's flagship, the Fierce Wind, led the charge directly at the Dominion command cruiser. His ship shook with impact after impact. Damage reports filled his screens. He ignored them all. "Fire everything," he ordered. The Fierce Wind unleashed every weapon it had. Missiles streaked toward the enemy ship. Energy cannons tore into its hull. The Dominion cruiser tried to turn away, but it was too slow, too large, too confident in its own strength. The command cruiser exploded in a ball of fire that briefly the stars. Without their leader, the Dominion fleet fell into chaos. Ships collided trying to retreat. Captains gave conflicting orders. The human strike force pressed their advantage, destroying vessel after vessel until the survivors fled into faster-than-light travel. The communication station fell an hour later. 3 sectors of Dominion space went dark. Back on Prime, Grand Admiral received the reports with growing horror. The humans were not attacking like any enemy she had faced before. They were not trying to capture territory or force negotiations. They were systematically destroying every strategic target they could reach. She gathered her fleet in orbit around the capital world. 800 capital ships, the largest concentration of military power in the galaxy. Whatever the humans sent against her, she would be ready. They will come here, she told her captains. Their admiral is on this world. They will try to rescue him. We will be waiting. But was not a fool. She had studied human tactics. She knew they would not attack directly into her strength. They would do something unexpected, something clever. She needed to be more clever. Deep beneath the palace, Wu heard the alarms. He had been returned to his cell after his speech. The guards had beaten him for his words, but the beating was nothing compared to what came next. The chaos of the approaching human fleet had distracted his captors. Security had become sloppy. Wu waited until the guard outside his cell looked away at his communicator. Then he moved. His hands were still bound, but the chains had slack. Enough slack. The guard never saw him coming. A moment later, the guard was unconscious and Wu had his weapon and keys. He freed himself from his chains and moved through the detention level. Other cells held prisoners from conquered species. A four-armed being from a world called, a small, quick creature from the ocean planet, a tall, thin figure whose species Wu did not recognize. He opened their cells one by one. "I am escaping," he told them simply. "You can come with me or stay, your choice." They came with him, all of them, 12 prisoners from 8 different species, following a broken old human through the corridors of their enemy's stronghold. "Why are you helping us?" they asked as they moved. "Because it is the right thing to do," Wu replied, "and because you will help me in return." They encountered guards twice. Both times, Wu handled the situation with brutal efficiency that surprised his fellow escapees. This old human moved like a trained warrior. His age seemed to disappear when violence was necessary. They reached a communication terminal in an empty office. Wu's fingers flew across the controls. The Dominion technology was unfamiliar, but all communication systems worked on similar principles. He found what he was looking for in minutes. "What are you doing?" they asked. "Sending a message to my people," Wu said. "Detailed information about Dominion fleet positions, defensive weaknesses, the location where plans to trap them." He smiled slightly. "She is a good commander, but I have been doing this longer." The message transmitted. Somewhere in space, Commander Hana received it on her flagship. She read the Admiral's intelligence report and immediately understood what it meant. "All ships adjust approach vector," she ordered. "Pattern 3. The Admiral has given us a gift. Let's not waste it." The human fleet changed course. Instead of attacking Prime directly, they swung wide around the planet. Its defensive formation was designed to stop a frontal assault. It was weak on the flanks. Saw the maneuver on her tactical display. She recognized it immediately. Pattern 3. She had read about it in captured human tactical manuals. It was the same maneuver Admiral had used against the swarm 40 years ago. He was giving them orders from a cell in her own capital. "All ships adjust formation," she commanded. "They are trying to flank us, close the gap." But her ships were large and slow. Human vessels were smaller and faster. By the time the Dominion fleet repositioned, the humans had already slipped through the gap and were entering orbit. Tried to recover. She ordered her ships into a pincer movement, trapping the human fleet between her forces and the planet's defense platforms. It was a desperate gamble, but it might work. If she could catch them between two forces, superior numbers would win. Hana saw the trap closing. For a moment she felt fear. Then she remembered her training, she remembered her teacher, and she knew exactly what to do. "All ships execute Pattern 12. Pattern 12, the most dangerous maneuver in the human tactical library. It required perfect timing and absolute trust between captains. It had never been used in actual combat, but Hana had practiced it 1,000 times in simulations, and she had learned it directly from the man who created it. The human fleet suddenly split into 3 groups. Each group accelerated in a different direction. The Dominion forces tried to pursue, but they could not chase 3 targets at once. They had to choose. While they chose, the 3 human groups curved back toward each other. They passed through gaps in the Dominion formation, firing as they went. Then they rejoined and hit the main Dominion fleet from behind. Watched her forces crumble. Ships exploded around her. Captains reported losses that seemed impossible. The humans were everywhere at once, striking weak points, avoiding strong ones, never staying still long enough to be targeted. "This cannot be happening," she whispered. But it was happening. The greatest fleet in the galaxy was being destroyed by a force 1/10 its size, because that smaller force had something the Dominion lacked. They had been trained by Wu's flagship took a direct hit. Alarms screamed. Fires broke out on 3 decks. She knew the battle was lost. Her fleet was in ruins. Her empire was burning. She activated her communication system and sent one final message to Emperor in his palace below. "I warned you," she said. "I told you the humans were dangerous. You did not listen. Now we pay the price." Her ship exploded moments later. In orbit above Prime, the human fleet secured total control. Commander Hana looked at the burning wreckage of the Dominion Armada, the largest fleet in the galaxy, reduced to debris in a single battle. She opened a communication channel to the planet below. Her voice was calm and cold. "This is Commander Hana of the United Earth Defense Fleet. Your fleet is destroyed. Your Grand Admiral is dead. You have 1 hour to return our Admiral unharmed. If you do not, we will come down there and take him ourselves, and we will not be gentle." In his palace, Emperor heard the message. He looked out his window at the fires in the sky. His nobles were screaming and running. His guards were disappearing. He had wanted war with humanity. He had gotten it. Human Marines landed on Prime as the sun rose over the capital city. They came in that fell from the sky like metal rain. The palace guards tried to resist. They lasted approximately 4 minutes. Commander Hana led the assault personally. She would not wait on her ship while her mentor was still in enemy hands. Her boots touched the marble floor of the palace entrance, and she did not stop moving until she reached the throne room. Emperor sat on his throne. He had nowhere to run. His nobles had abandoned him. His guards had surrendered or fled. Lord had tried to escape through a secret passage and was now kneeling in chains beside the throne. The great emperor of the Dominion sat alone, watching human soldiers fill his throne room. Hana did not look at him. Her eyes searched the room for only one person. "Admiral," she spoke into her communicator, "report your position." The response came from a corridor on the eastern side of the room. "I am here, Commander. I brought some friends." The doors opened. Wu walked through them slowly. His body was broken. He limped badly. Bruises and cuts covered his face, but he was alive, and he was smiling. Behind him came the prisoners he had freed, 12 beings from 8 species, following the old human who had led them to freedom. They looked at the human soldiers with wonder. These were the creatures the Dominion had called weak. These were the soldiers who had destroyed the greatest fleet in the galaxy. Hana ran to her mentor. She caught him as his legs gave out. For a moment she held him like a daughter holding her father. Tears streamed down her face. "You took your time," Wu said softly. "Traffic was heavy," Hana replied through her tears. She helped him to a chair that her soldiers brought. Medical officers immediately began treating his wounds. The 12 freed prisoners were also attended to. They would be returned to there as soon as possible. Once Wu was seated, the room fell silent. Everyone waited to see what would happen next. Captain Ho approached the chair where Wu sat. He held a sidearm in his hands. He kneeled before the admiral and presented the weapon. "Admiral," Ho said formally, "the enemy is defeated. Their emperor is our prisoner. The entire galaxy is watching this moment on the broadcast drones." He lifted the weapon higher. "The right of vengeance belongs to you." Wu looked at the weapon for a long moment. Then he looked at Emperor, the alien who had tortured him, who had mocked him, who had threatened to destroy humanity, sat on his throne trying to maintain his dignity, but fear showed in his eyes. "Bring him to me," Wu said. Soldiers pulled from his throne. They forced him to his knees before Wu's chair. The positions were now reversed. The emperor knelt before the prisoner he had called worthless. Wu studied him carefully, tried to meet his gaze but could not hold it for long. "You tortured me for days," Wu said quietly. "You humiliated me before the galaxy. You threatened to destroy my people. You killed 17 innocent civilians on Nu. My wife is buried there. You desecrated her resting place." Said nothing. There was nothing to say. Wu reached out and took the weapon from Ho's hands. He felt its weight. Such a small thing. Such an easy thing. One squeeze of the trigger and the being who had caused so much suffering would cease to exist. The galaxy watched. Billions of beings on thousands of worlds waited to see what humanity would do with their victory. Would they be like the Dominion? Would they execute their enemies and celebrate death? Wu lowered the weapon. "No," he said. The word echoed through the silent throne room. Ho looked confused. Hana looked uncertain, looked shocked. "Admiral," Ho asked. Wu handed the weapon back to the captain. "We did not come here for revenge. We came to end a threat. If I execute this creature, I become no better than he is. Humanity is better than that. We have to be." He looked at the broadcast drones floating nearby. He knew the galaxy was watching. "I have seen enough death in my life," he said. "I have caused enough death. War is sometimes necessary, but cruelty never is. The Dominion was cruel. They conquered through fear and violence. They thought strength meant destroying everyone who opposed them." He shook his head slowly. "They were wrong. True strength is knowing when to fight and when to show mercy. True power is building things, not destroying them." He turned back, too. The Emperor was staring at him with an expression he could not understand. "You will not die today," Wu said. "Instead, you will live. You will watch your empire transform. You will personally apologize to every species you conquered. You will help rebuild what you destroyed. And every day, for the rest of your life, you will remember that a weak-old human showed you mercy when you deserved none." The terms of surrender were broadcast across the galaxy. The Dominion would release all conquered species immediately. Their military would be reduced to defensive forces only. They would pay reparations to every world they had damaged. An emperor would remain as a figurehead, a living reminder of the price of arrogance. The conquered species could not believe what they were seeing. The humans had won total victory. They could have claimed the Dominion's territory for themselves. They could have enslaved their enemies. They could have become the new tyrants of the galaxy. Instead, they offered freedom. Representatives from the freed species approached Wu as the formalities concluded. The who had escaped with him spoke for the group. "Why?" she asked simply. "Why would you free us? What do you gain?" Wu smiled. It was the first genuine smile he had shown since his capture. "We gain nothing," he said. "That is the point. Humanity does not want an empire. We want neighbors, friends. We want a galaxy where every species can thrive without fear. We gain nothing from your freedom except the knowledge that we did what was right." The studied him for a long moment. Then she bowed deeply. "The Dominion called you weak," she said. "They were fools. I have never seen such strength." 6 months passed. The galaxy was transformed. Former Dominion territory became independent worlds and new alliances. Trade routes opened between species that had never communicated before. The fear that had dominated the galaxy for centuries began to fade. Humanity was respected now. Not feared, respected. Other species told stories about the humans who had defeated the Dominion not through cruelty, but through courage and mercy. They called humans the quiet protectors, the patient storm, the species that fought only when necessary and forgave when possible. Wu finally completed his original journey. He returned to New Colony, to the memorial garden where his wife was buried. Commander Hana accompanied him. She would not let him travel alone again. The garden had been rebuilt. The damage from the Dominion raid was gone. New flowers bloomed around the memorial stones. Wu walked slowly to his wife's marker. He placed a small bouquet of flowers before it. "I'm sorry I took so long," he said quietly. "There was some trouble, but it's over now." Hana stood a respectful distance away. She watched her old mentor kneel before the stone and speak words too quiet for her to hear. Private words, the words of a husband to a wife. When Wu finally stood, there were tears on his face, but he was smiling. "She would have been angry at me," he told Hana. "She always said I worked too much, that I needed to rest, that I needed to stop carrying the galaxy on my shoulders." "She sounds wise," Hana said. She was. Wu looked up at the sky. Somewhere up there, human ships patrolled peacefully. Other species traveled freely. Children were being born on worlds that had known only oppression for generations. She would be proud of what we built, a galaxy where everyone can live without fear. He took one last look at the memorial. Then he turned and walked away, Hana at his side. Across the galaxy, beings of every species told stories about the war. They spoke of the old human who was captured and tortured, who was mocked as weak and worthless, who stood before the most powerful emperor in the galaxy and declared war with words that still echoed in their memories. They spoke of humanity's fury, the fleet that came like a storm, the soldiers who fought with skill and courage, the victory that seemed impossible. But mostly they spoke of what came after, the mercy that no one expected, the freedom that was given freely, the choice to build rather than destroy. They called him many things, the patient storm, the quiet protector, the merciful warrior, but the title that spread farthest across the stars was simpler. They called him the teacher, because Wu had taught the galaxy a lesson it would never forget. True strength is not found in the ability to destroy. True strength is found in the wisdom to know when not to.